Thanks for tuning in. Glad to meet you again with this podcast today after a gap of 1 week. How have you been in this week? Did you do some weeding? This is Vinina and you're listening to the Audible Weed Walk, episode number 33. Last couple of weeks we talked about unhinging the act of eating wild, uncultivated green we called weeds from its social stigma of either being a poor person's food or being the food that is associated with people at the bottom of the caste ladder. A ladder that by now should not exist if you ask me. Perhaps in our noticing the weedy green, enjoying, coloring them in the book, and recognizing them growing around and eventually nourishing our bodies with these amazingly nutritious greens is our way to honor the living knowledge of people who have been eating them. At the same time, it is an opportunity to enhance that knowledge by cultivating in us, in our daily lives, the tradition of inquiry that allows us to keep in touch and be at awe with nature and grow with it. Learning to recognize new edible ones, finding new ways of eating them, building up a new tradition. I had visited a farm this week, a wonderful organic farm. There is a certain gentleness in that operation that one can only come with care. The farm is a weedy heaven. I have not seen such huge leaves of Boerhaavia diffusa, in Sanskrit what is known as Punarnava, and in Tamil, Mukarattikire, before I had actually visited this farm. It is one of the tastiest green that there is. In this wondrous integrated farm, they were not removing these weeds per se, which I am very glad about, but they did not recognize them either. Briefly inquiring, we got into a conversation we always encounter. How the elderly members of and perhaps still hold in their memory some of this knowledge, and now, with the new generation, it is dwindling. But like I said last time we met, ours is not a tradition of memories and practices of forgotten reasons, but it is a tradition of inquiry that we need to continue to refine. And we can only refine if we continue to use it. It is in this tradition that allows us to be in tune with nature and learn. Learn to embrace the old and try out something new. Remember in the 80s, there was a slogan called Think Globally, Act Locally. Though not exactly in the same thing, I find yet another phrase, simple living and high thinking, which has probably remained in our country longer, in line with the same, with the other. So I was intrigued reading this article that said that we have veered away from thinking globally and acting locally by thinking navally. Comes from navel gazing, even a heightened degree of local thinking, and acting globally, which is a kind of a dangerous trend. But I don't know about that. But it made me think, these statements made me think, is our unsustainable supply chain increasing the distance between the farm and plate, be an example where we fail to think globally or sustainably about climate change and act locally by getting our nourishments from the local areas, from our own yard, from farms that are local, fruits and vegetables that are native, wild greens that grows easily and naturally instead of depending on a lot on the transported processed food, and maybe some exotics, not as an exception from time to time, but as a regular habit. This and the journey I am inquiring about the weedy greens, learning more about them, often brings me to the question, how do biodiversity and culture intersect? I am here quoting a paper that was written by 17 authors researching on the very question for a plenary session on sustaining cultural and biological diversity in a rapidly changing world, lessons for global policy. And these set of scientists, they say, there is a common recognition around the world that the diversity of lives involves both the living forms, which is biological diversity, and the world views and the cosmologies of what life means, which is the cultural diversity. The importance of this diversity is increasingly recognized, as is the knowledge of this diversity, even in industrialized society, where it is often heavily depleted, and in urban areas where people are often disconnected from their traditional natural resource base. Now comes the part that is revealing, to me at least. I continue to quote here. It says, "The division commonly made between nature and culture is not universal, and in many cases is a product of modern industrialized thought shape by a need to control or manage nature." That is to say, these scientists are telling that what we already know in our hearts and perhaps in our guts too. They, like us, collectively believe that any division of nature and culture is artificial. Remember the Pink Floyd song? Set the control to the heart of the sun. Let's set our controls to nature. Nature, culture, social, financial, environmental, all linked to nature. Being a weeder is just an unique opportunity that allows us to ease into doing exactly that, bring our consciousness, our attention to our immediate surrounding that are here and now. In many ways, you would say that it is the first step towards real sustainability and ecological living. Then let's expand our embrace and attention to others who are connected to nature or wants to, wherever they are. See, this will reconnect back to the think globally, act locally aspiration. Just to clarify, in connecting with others also connected with nature, I do not by any means condone eating or sourcing wild food traditionally foraged by indigenous communities by making them commodities, thus very likely impoverishing those communities nutritionally and leading to overexploitation of that resource that we appreciate. We will feel a natural connection, a sense of solidarity with people who act locally. We can be amazed by our similarities, learn from our differences, support and appreciate and enable and encourage each other. That way, we will strengthen our tradition of inquiry for better appreciation of nature. Metaphorically, we can grow our roots deeper while opening our arms like the branches to reach beyond. How cool is that? Can we take this consciousness to our decisions about what to eat, where to source them, how to facilitate local growing and access local food, facilitate exchanges, process and preserve locally, dispose our waste, keep our soil healthy and alive, keep our air clean, build a city, an urban scape that is totally sustainable? You must be laughing now, but true, we can actually start wherever we want to, wherever we choose to, and bringing our attention to something as simple as weeds actually works. Try it. Well, at the risk of repeating and drumming the goodies about weeds, as we know, all weeds are medicinal. Some are edible too. They are not just an easy, wonderful, ultra-organic source of nourishment. They're especially rich source of micronutrients. On top, remember, scientists have concluded that of all the plants that we notice in our daily lives, I mean not the planktons and the algae, weeds are the ones where we can first notice the change due to the changing climate. Maybe we will notice some weeds are gone, new ones are in, some are more abundant than they were before, some are rarer, some are doing very well and others struggling. Well, we can only notice them if we set our controls to nature via these wild greens. Weeds are the language that both climate and soil speaks to us if we listen. For example, soil. We all know healthy soil is the first step towards healthy growth. Healthy planet, since healthy soil also sequesters a lot of carbon equivalents. How do we know about the soil from these weeds? Well, even before we go into soil testing, the weeds tells us their presence or by their presence and absence, if or not they are flourishing, if the soil is alkaline, acidic, saline, if it has been disturbed recently, what is the moisture regime, etc. It's like a code language. You know, in the traditional Indian education system, apparently everybody had to learn 64 subjects to call themselves educated. That included reading, writing, calculations, etc., of course. But it also included music and especially dance. Our traditional dance form had mudras, or the sign languages. They are the languages with which the dancer conveys emotion and stories to the audience. So, to fully appreciate classical dance form, one needs to know those mudras, and then one can only learn the mudras by learning the dance yourself. Hence, the dance was one of the 64 essential lessons that one had to learn to call themselves educated. Maybe we can educate ourselves the sign languages of the weeds. When you bring your attention to the weeds, you will notice that it is weeds who bring the pollinators to the plants that we cultivate and tend. And seldom it is the other way around. Amazing, isn't it? Again, we need to know which one attracts whom. There is a whole load of research waiting to be done. Exploration, learning and sharing that can happen strengthen our understanding of the weeds and each other. Hold that thought. I'll come back next week with more. Until then, stay well and stay safe.